Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to our virtual Justice on the Block Legal Information Clinic. This clinic is part of the virtual series Know Your Child's Education Rights, and this particular segment is about what schools can do to help children who speak another language. So I am Stephanie Johnson. I'm the senior attorney in the Tallahassee Office of Legal Services in North Florida, and we have Cheryl Sadler, our education advocate with Legal Services in North Florida. And just a couple of housekeeping tips. This video provides legal information and should not be considered legal advice. This video does not create an attorney-client relationship or substitute legal advice you've been given, and you may have defenses that we haven't discussed, so seeking out an attorney for legal help is always advisable. And if you want more information about legal services in North Florida, you can go to www.lsnf.org or call 850-385-9007. So thank you for joining us today. And I'm just going to dive into my questions for Cheryl. So Cheryl, who is considered an English language learner?
Great. So obviously that's a great place to start because you can only get services if a school knows that you need services. And so the school has to figure out who it will consider an English learner or an English language learner. There's lots of different terms for this. And there's generally two steps. First, a school district will send home what they call a home language survey, which is pretty straightforward. It's sent home with all the other stuff that you have to sign to get your kid into school. And it says, it has maybe 4 or 5 questions, really short. It says, what's the language that you speak in the home? What's the language that the student speaks most often? Sometimes what are languages that other people in the home speak? Sometimes it's what was the first language the student learned. And basically every kid gets one of these, whether they speak, Haitian Creole or English, everybody gets one and fills it out. And then when it comes back to the district looks, and if it sees anything other than English, it takes step 2. And step 2 is you take a test. And in Florida, that test is called WIDA, which stands for something, World something, something, something. And it basically, decides what level you are in speaking, listening, reading, and writing English. And if you score under a certain level, they say, yeah, you know what? You need some support. You are an English learner.
Okay. But so do you know about how many English language learners are in Florida?
Oh, gosh. I think Florida may have invented English learners. We are actually the 3rd largest state in terms of population. We just eclipsed New York on the latest census. And we also have the 3rd largest population of Ls, which is how you EL or L in the country. So we have more than 250,000. That's 250,000 English learners. And the biggest group of those speak Spanish, and then Haitian Creole and Portuguese. But then, and this one always surprises me, then it goes to Arabic and then Vietnamese. But there are literally 300 different languages spoken by children in the schools.
Wow. And I could see a parent being concerned about filling this out, maybe if they're not a U.S. citizen. Does it matter if the student is not a U.S. citizen?
There have been so many controversies around this. I'm really glad you brought that up. Absolutely not. There is a very strong constitutional right in this country for education services for all children who reside here, whether or not they are documented, whether or not their parents are documented. And there are safeguards that should be in place. Sometimes these happen anyway, but schools are really legally not allowed to require parents to show their ID, give a social security number, birth certificate, immigration documents. They can't discourage a parent from enrolling a child because they're undocumented. They don't have to answer questions about their immigration status. And, something that comes up in schools a lot with undocumented children is that sometimes parents don't like to fill out the free lunch form, which gives you access to either a free or reduced price lunch. But there is literally a prohibition against sharing that data with anybody connected with any other part of the government. So, if that ever happens, that's something where somebody would want to call a lawyer, because you don't want to just, I mean, it's in everybody's best interest to educate kids.
Right.
And, look at the dreamers.
Okay. So does it, and I know you said the school sends a sheet home at the beginning of the year, but does the school otherwise notify the parent about English language programs?
Yes, because this is a choice. So a parent can have a child and say, no, I don't want my child to get any language services. And so they have to be told why their child was identified, how proficient they are or are not, the recommendations, what the program is supposed to do for their child, and how long the child might be in that program. And so they basically have the right of refusal. So, and Florida law probably even underlines that, because Florida law is very strong on the parent's right to determine how the care and upbringing of their child.
And this may seem like common sense, but what if the parent doesn't speak English and these forms are going home to the parent in English?
I wish that it were common sense. This is something that really is a problem in a lot of schools. And, in some school districts like Miami, it's a different kind of problem. The problem is, under federal law, a school must provide interpretation. So, and that's of everything that goes home, everything that's important for a parent to know. So the code of conduct, the home language form, the information about an English program, when they sign up for soccer, all of that stuff. And what I said about Miami is, in Miami, it's probably really easy to get a Spanish translation, but I don't know how easy it is to get an Arabic translation. So districts are supposed to, and schools are supposed to offer this proactively to parents. Unfortunately, it generally is the case that parents have to advocate for these services themselves. If they can't translate into a written form, they have to make an oral translation available. And you and I know that even for very small language groups, there are oral interpreters available at a phone service. So, and every school district has this phone service. It's really important to know that. So every parent, whether they speak English or not, whether they are differently abled or not, have the right to all the information about their child's schooling, including enrollment, parent-teacher conferences, services, and they have to be able to understand that.
Well, that makes sense. And so if a child is found to be an English language learner, they speak a different language, the scores are low, then what services do they get from the school?
Yeah, so this gets a little vague. It's very, very different depending on what district you are. There are 3 general types of programs. And the first is English only, and that's basically no services at all. I'm trying to think. They might give them a bilingual dictionary, something like that they could look things up. The second is mostly in the child's language with a little bit of English. So we're actually talking in Spanish back and forth, and every now and again we might say, oh, and in English that is this. And then the third one, which, again, might be common sense, is pretty much half and half. So teachers are supposed to have special training, and it's rather extensive, the training that they have to receive. And then every child gets a plan that spells out how many minutes of instruction they're supposed to get, the kind of adjustments, sometimes they call those accommodations, that teachers should make. And again, sometimes it's a dictionary, sometimes it's more time to take a test, sometimes it's being able to present orally instead of in writing. So, and it really depends on how old the child is and how fluent they are in English.
Well, and I was going to ask, and I know this depends on the child, depends on the age and everything, but generally, how long does it take a child to learn English?
Oh boy, if I had a great answer to that question, I would be so smart. It depends on a lot of things, and the biggest thing seems to be how old the child is. So a younger child learns a language more quickly. And the second thing is how literate, whether they were literate in their first language. So, for example, if you come to school in the US and you speak Arabic, but you've never been to school, and so you don't know how to read in Arabic, your brain has to learn two things, right? It has to learn English and reading. So that makes it take longer. But it's about 3 to 5 years on average. And if your child is not learning English quickly enough, a parent should talk to the school and should say, hey, what is going on? Are there other programs? And they do get a report every year that shows their proficiency. And Florida's gotten really good in the last couple of years at making those reports have a lot fewer big words and a lot more big charts so that you can track your child's progress a lot more easily.
And because they are learning English and maybe they've learned a basic amount of English, does that mean they have to stop using the language that, their original language?
No. And that's really important because that's a right. That has to do with who you are and what's important to you. And again, like I said, sometimes if you are really very literate in your first language, it will help you learn English. So it's not like a child's brain automatically forgets the other language. It's not like English pushes it out of the way. Being bilingual also is a huge, huge advantage in the workplace. So, basically, a child is allowed to speak their own language unless there's a really good educational reason. Like, hey, we're learning English right now in this class. That would be a good reason. But in line for lunch, at recess, with my friends, texting, that is totally, totally okay.
So it sounds like if they're learning English, they can still socially use their original, their birth language.
That's a good distinction. Yeah. Yes, so socially.
Okay. The children in these programs still have to take all the state tests, the FSA, the FCAT in English?
This has also been really controversial. And every year, some legislators in the state bring up a bill that tries to help us make tests in other languages. That turns out to be really complicated. And so let me give you the short answer. The short answer is yes, except for the very first year that you start school in the US. If you happen to be between 3rd grade and 10th grade where you take the state test, you take it in math, but not in English. After that, you take it in English and in math, English language arts. So you take it in ELA and math in the English language. And you also keep taking that test of fluency. And you keep taking it even if you are in that special program, so you're learning English, and you graduate from the program. They say you're great. They actually keep giving you the test for a couple of years just to make sure that you're doing okay. So it's their way of kind of monitoring to make sure that they didn't exit you too early.
Okay. And then can an English language learner still be in other programs like the gifted program or other types of programs?
That is, I think COVID has shown us, among other things, how important these other activities are in terms of just connecting kids to schools. So, I was kind of a dorky kid, so I really loved to go to school just to learn stuff. But absolutely, English learners have the right to be in every other program. In fact, they cannot be excluded on that basis. They have the absolute same rights and opportunities to participate in all the programs as any child. And that kind of goes back to getting the information to the parents, because that's the opportunity, right? You have to know that a program exists. And this is something that, we just need to continue to push because it's really important. And it's something that our schools really aren't very good at yet.
And I know we had a child that we represented who was from Guatemala, and she really wanted to run track. And when we asked about the track tryouts, they said, oh, there's posters all over the school about the tryouts, which were all in English. So our client didn't know about it.
That's a really good example, because what happens is, we need to figure that out for this child. But it needs to be a regular thing, because, even when you have a child that speaks English, the parent doesn't always speak English or speak it or read it well enough to understand what's coming home. And sometimes they're not comfortable just coming into the school, missing work, whatever, to ask for translation. And this is a way that schools need to reach out to parents and make it easier. Schools want parent involvement. They have to make it possible for parents to be involved.
Right. So is there anything else that I forgot to ask you about that you wanted to add?
I think the point on documented students and undocumented students is really worth emphasizing. If a school ever tries to push for that kind of information, schools are like the safe place for undocumented children. And so that's not okay. And if that happens, or if you do get excluded, I think, please tell someone so that you can fix it not just for you and your child, but for other children.
Great. Thank you so much, Cheryl. This is super useful.
Hey, do you want to tell them about the resources?
I just stuck, yes, I did. I just put some resources on the chat. Why don't you describe what they are real quick?
Oh, sure. Color in Colorado, it has nothing to do with Colorado, in case that seems odd. It's just a great resource with basic information about what it's like to be an English learner, what schools have to do, what students' rights are. And then the second one is a toolkit, and it basically, it's for kids and their parents who are new to English and new to U.S. schools, and it basically sort of fills them in on things like, oh, schools have these kind of rules, and here's how you should ask, and here's how you monitor your child's achievement. And then the third thing is put out by the people who do the test that we give here in Florida. And it's just a basic resource on how English learners can engage with schools. And so these are great resources for teachers, for parents, and for advocates.
Great. That's super useful. All right. Thank you. And this was the last scheduled event in the education series, but we are going to be adding additional segments to the series. So once we get those segments worked out and the dates, we will be sending, I guess, uploading this schedule on the additional segments.
Hey, Steph, and folks can write us, right? Is there I think they can comment on the video, because we'd love to hear what people feel like they need to know about. We base what we've been doing on our clients and the needs that we see. But if there are things that that other folks are thinking about, we'd be happy to research them and try.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.